Hello.
Hey guys.
Hey, good morning. What's up, Robert?
Good morning to you. Mistakes.
I need a better virtual background. It's pretty boring.
Like a Star Wars.
Yeah, something.
Some of you are cockpit thing, the center command line.
See, they don't have any options in Zoom, just blur or none. All right. I'm not going to get my own.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, Thomas.
Okay, as it's already 5 minutes late, I think we can start. Yes, welcome to today's tag meeting. Today we have a few agenda points. I think they are a bit less than we had initially. So I think we had a presentation of Mist there, which is not taking place.
Is that going to take place another time, Thomas, or is Chris not doing it?
To be honest, I'm not sure. So did he write something in the Slack channel? Doesn't seem so.
And I just saw someone come into the dock about 10 minutes ago and erase the line. I thought it might be you. Maybe it was him.
No, so it was not me, but nevertheless, it's let's talk to him and when he wants to present.
Yeah, I'm bringing it up because maybe maybe he opens a GitHub issue too, and that way we can do some synchronous stuff.
It's also possible, yes.
Yes, so maybe we can suggest that for him.
Okay, then the first agenda point we would have today are working group updates, and I think only one working group is here today. So are there any news from the Cooperative Delivery working group?
So last, I was the only one in the last meeting. So I shared some stuff with myself, and but I was working on this evergreen charter thing, and I put a link in there. It's kind of to say, if we had people, these are the things we would do. So take a look, see what you think. I think it's the right stuff, but we need more support to do it. So we know about that issue, Thomas. So that's long and short of it.
I think we also have the topic of multi-tenancy in your working group, right? So
kind of. It was never like officially accepted, but yeah, it makes sense. In fact, that's why I put on their KCP, which is an interesting project coming out of Red Hat right now around multi-tenancy. But yeah, I don't know. We kind of need someone to drive that. Like I said, I was only one of the last meeting, and Robert and me were the only ones in the one before. So
yeah, I think the multi-tenancy or tenants white paper is it's like I said a couple of times, it's a really interesting project to do. At the same time, we just need to kickstart it, and we haven't been able to do that due to, I guess, a lot of factors on a lot of people's plates. Anything that we can do to get that ball rolling, I think would be interesting. But at the same time, since we're talking about doing operator white paper part 2 or version 2, maybe we have the other white paper a little bit on the back burner. And for instance, from my own sake, I would like to just even be like a shadow on the operator white paper, just to kind of get into that zone, if you know what I mean. And then since we are so few and we kind of spread across all these different working groups and all these different parts of the tag, I see the operator white paper as an easy, not easy, but it's at least easy to get started because it's already there, and we just need to reiterate, and we're going to discuss that and so on and so forth. While the multi-tenancy white paper is a little bit more substantial. It's something from scratch, and we need to establish a group of people that's doing it and everything like that. So yeah.
Yes, I totally agree there. So you can't drive all of the effort. From my perspective, it would make sense if the Cooperative Delivery Working Group would work a bit more on the multi-tenancy white paper, because I think this could get people into the working group, because it's a topic which is very interesting for many people, and therefore this we should have kind of a focus there. Hello, Alois, by the way.
I agree, and hey, Alois. but yeah, I agree. It's a really good project to have under the Corporate Delivery Working Group, It just happens to be mostly me and Josh, and it's kind of hard to split attention between. I'm both in the GitOps working group and the Cooperative Delivery working group, and when they operate a white paper version 2 and stuff like that. The time that one has accessible to doing extracurricular things just kind of gets spliced into so small pieces that can barely get stuff done. So that's just why I'm saying, like, the multi-tenant white paper. If we can start looking into it, we can start planning stuff, but like attack it after the white paper, the operator white paper at least has, begin to roll at least, if nothing else.
I think it could be a good starting point to dedicate one of the next cooperative delivery working group to the multi-tenancy stuff, to get the people on board and to find out who is interested and who has ideas regarding this.
And by the way, on this topic, getting interest and getting more reach, I think one of the problems, I think, is less that people that we don't have necessarily interest in it. I think there are enough people out there who have actually interest. But the problem is also very much the people most likely really don't know about it. That was an action item that I took away a while back. And we have the possibility to publish on the CNCF blog. So we can use CNCF means to publish and push things out. And we should actively start using it, like security and others are using it because there's enough people out there that would have an interest to contribute. I think right now they just don't learn about it. So I'm still in the process on figuring out how this is exactly done. But that for me would be a first step, like publishing these initiatives and what we're working on and what we're doing there, so that we really get some visibility. And just then, like, us starting to then socially share this stuff, having some information there, showing people how they can contribute and so forth, will help to get more visibility and more people than right now. Because I think right now, as we are a small group, I mean, there's always obviously ups and downs on size. It's just a bit hard to get people always interested in this. So that's also, I think, what we should, at least for one of those initiatives, start to do. Still have a follow-up there with Amy. That should help us as well.
If you, Luis, then got word on how we can do a blog post or something like that, I could write one for the multi-tenant white paper and like a call to action there. But again, it's like, how do we do that? Like, do we send it to someone, or like those kind of details?
I was just also traveling, but I'm working on it. Others are already doing it. So thanks for the offer. I'll get back to you as soon as I have more details on this one. But I think that's really the key on how to do it. And if we don't get like being able to publish it on the CNCF blog, like we can easily even take that information, put it on a nicely formatted even GitHub page and share it out, or that we don't use Medium, which the CNCF doesn't want us to do, and even have it available there. I think everything we can share with the wider community and that has some reach is definitely going to be helpful, because I think nobody's looking into our issues unless they're the meeting schedule.
I think this totally makes sense. Okay, anything more about the cooperative delivery working group at the moment?
Not that I know of, Josh. No.
Okay, so we have. I reached out to the people of the other working groups, but I think this was too short notice. Does anybody know something more about the GitOps working group or the chaos engineering working group?
They are pretty silent recently.
I have had a bit of a month of not being able to do anything, so I haven't been in GitOps any of the GitOps working group meetings lately, and I haven't really seen anyone complain about anything. So I think it's business as usual. People are just getting ready for KubeCon. I think that's about it. But obviously, yeah, I don't think there is any big major issues or something like that. They are working a lot with like the trying to break up stuff like who is a member of Open GitOps and what kind of member tiers are there. There was a little some people were not happy with the founding member tier, which is kind of weird. But there has been a little bit of someone who was not happy about how people got credit, which I find kind of weird. Like I added Crayon as a member, not a founding member, even though I was there from almost the start. And I don't care because obviously the bigger names, they have a load started and all, but some don't see it like that, I guess. So they're doing a lot with like governance and things like that in the background and trying to move away from the working group, because that's also a thing, like disbanding the working group and then going over to being a full-on project and how you deal with that.
Yeah, but yeah, I think we might be able to reach out to Chris Short as well.
Yeah.
And also Josh too. Not the Josh here, the one from the GitHub working group, on what their plans really are. Because if they really want to shut it down, then they should have a plan to do it and want to do everything as part of the project.
Yeah, they're working on it. That was the idea from the start, having the working group as a short-lived thing to get the Open GitOps project up and running. And now the Open GitOps project is in the CNCF, and there's a website, there's all these kind of things around it, but it's been lagging behind when it comes to transferring certain documents and so on and so forth.
Yeah, but that's something where we can do the outreach and ask them on how to, because Chris mentioned it also a while back.
Yeah, I can also ask. It's probably today or something, but I can ask also Chris if there's anything that I can help with there. I know they're busy enough to just be in like that one part of the tag. Hey, yeah, I can make it. I can go. I can take it rounds. It's okay.
Perfect. Yes, then we have, I think, two project updates. So one from the open feature project, and the second one, I think Chris is also here now. We will hear some presentation of the Mist.io project. So who of you both wants to start?
I won't do it today. I saw it in the agenda. Sorry for for interrupting. I saw it in the agenda. I had to cancel it. I had to cancel the previous meeting, and I was planning to reschedule today for another for another meeting. So yeah, sorry for the mix-up. But yeah, I would prefer if we were to do it next time. Is that okay with everyone?
Well, next time is KubeCon, so that would be after KubeCon.
It's okay. Yeah, we can do it after KubeCon. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's like today not that many people here, so we can then later on move it. But the last time it was always last minute cancellations, and then usually we move other things to the next meeting. So like a short heads up then would be appreciated, or like then that we could really do it in the next meeting. That would be great.
Okay, so well, I could do it right now if you like. Just yeah.
I mean, it's fine if you want to move it again. That's fine too. But we can definitely otherwise start with Open GitOps, and then you can decide whether you want to.
Yeah. Okay.
Open GitOps.
All right.
Open feature. Sorry.
All right.
Too much openness.
We're also.
Yeah, I can go ahead and get started. Yeah, so there is a lot of openness, like Alois said. I'll go ahead and introduce myself, since I think this is the first time I've attended one of these meetings. I'm Todd. I'm an engineer at Dynatrace. I've been working on Open Feature, which I think has been mentioned at a few other meetings. So I'll give like a quick refresher on what it actually is, and then give an update, including a demo. I'm going to try and go through this stuff fast, but please cut me off if you think I'm taking up too much time. So just a reminder on what Open Feature is. It's a vendor-neutral open standard for feature flags. including SDK implementations for various languages, as well as some cloud native, Kubernetes native components. Over the weekend, we got a sudden bump in activity. Actually, our specification repository went from like 25 stars to like 100 and something. So the project's getting some interest recently, and it's growing pretty quickly. We have pretty good vendor participation. I'll go ahead and share my screen now. So this might have been something that has been brought up before, but I'll revisit it. So now we have this interested parties file in our community project, and it's just listing a whole bunch of people who are involved in the product or in the project at this point. You can see we have a good representation across a whole bunch of different vendors, many of which are SaaS feature flag vendors. So Flagsmith, LaunchDarkly, you may have heard of, Harness, Unleashed. There's a whole bunch of them, as well as we have some interested parties who are building their own feature flagging systems in-house. So eBay is a really good example of that. So it's good to have their contribution as well. This list continues to grow. A really cool, diverse representation of interest here. I also wanted to just give an update on the actual specification. So as I said, a big part of Open Feature is a vendor-neutral multi-language specification for a feature flag SDK, essentially. So a lightweight API, and then that you can pretty much include in any package without any dependencies, and then you can implement providers for any vendor using the SDK.
So your goal is the goal to create a common API for calling a feature flag service so that you could decouple the client from the service implementation?
Yes, that's one of the primary goals. So essentially, yeah, the primary goal from like the client SDK perspective is exactly what you just said, to completely abstract the source of any feature flag. You call it the source of truth for any feature flag or any feature flag evaluation, to completely abstract that and then present a consistent API across all those vendors. All those vendors or implementations. Like I said, they might not all be vendors. So I'll demo a little bit of that today, but you got it. That's it. So this is the spec, and
you also are the reference implementation, right? There's an implementation which is the reference for the spec, right? Which is also you're proposing to productize. Right?
Yeah, so we have we're basically going to have multiple implementations. So basically one for every language. One for every target language. So our initial target languages are Go, .NET, Java, and Node. And when I say Node, I'm mostly talking about server-side JavaScript. So we do have a few SDKs already in development.
So those are the SDKs, but on the service side, it's just one API, right? But you're going to have a bunch of SDKs.
So the service side, more or less what the providers communicate with, and this might be made more clear when I do the demo, is really mostly out of scope of the specification. So within our goals, we do want to develop a cloud native provider, which would talk to a Kubernetes native service, which would maintain a contract and features that are compatible with Open Feature. But the cloud native components themselves aren't explicitly defined in the spec, because the spec, at least in terms of the multi-language support and the SDK, the part of the spec we're talking about now, is completely agnostic of where the source of truth for any of this data comes from. It's your job as a spec implementer, as an API implementer, to simply define the abstractions necessary to communicate with that flag control plane, be it a Kubernetes native implementation, which we will implement. I guess that's the reference implementation you're talking about, or a vendor. But the specifics of how that particular cloud native feature flag operator and associated service work is not something we're going to specify here. We may develop an additional specification for that provider, for that flag control plane, but it's kind of out of the scope of the, what you mentioned first, which is the vendor neutral API that you actually use across various languages to call a flag evaluation. I hope that makes sense.
I think so, but you're gonna have to, I mean, if you build a bunch of SDKs, they have to talk to some API. So somebody must have implemented the control plane already, right?
Yeah, so most of how, I can show you how that works, but because almost every vendor provides SDKs themselves, a lot of the providers, I mean, you could have a provider that calls a REST service, but at the end of the day, a lot of the providers are going to wrap vendor feature flag SDKs, which themselves have the awareness of the upstream flag control plane. If you follow me.
Got it. Yeah, kind of like an open telemetry, you have to have an exporter that transforms to the external format. Okay,
That's
that
an
makes sense.
excellent
It's a good
comparison.
start.
Actually, a lot of this is, as I was also involved in the project, actually a lot of this is inspired by how open telemetry work. Think of like the SDK for feature flagging as the SDK on the API would see in open telemetry. And then the provider interface, which Todd will show here, as more or less what the exporter does in open telemetry, to have like this similarity. But the idea is pretty similar to that one, and there will then be one provider that is a cloud native provider that can work with the CRD.
Yeah, and to your point, it may be great to have a separate specification really dealing with how to generally implement a cloud native provider.
Right.
It's just, it's out of scope of directly what we're talking about right now. But
Comparing it to open telemetry, that would be like implementing the OTLP protocol natively.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you for that clarification. Really helpful.
No problem. So yeah, this the specification is still alpha, and it's pretty incomplete, but we do have the main parts of the application author facing API defined, as well as the providers, and the provider is really that adapter layer that we're talking about that allows you to connect with various vendors. So I won't dive too much into the spec here because it's not very exciting. Feel free to look at it if you want. It's under active development, obviously. I will do a quick demo, and this is the latest demo we have. It's not quite published yet, but what you're going to see here is basically a UI for a sample SaaS app landing page, software as a service landing page, and it's going to take advantage of multiple features within our current SDK implementation, within our alpha SDK implementation. And I'll try and run through that as quickly as I can, but feel free to stop me or ask questions. Okay, so we have this, very contrived landing page that you're seeing here, and it has a bunch of different features on it that are connected to. In this case, I launched this using the Launch Darkly provider. So we have 3 other providers with vendors currently now in our sample demo repository, but I'm just going to pick on Launch Darkly this time. It could be anything else. It could be Flagsmith or CloudView's feature management application, but I'm going to just do some basics. So, the marketing department is constantly changing the name of the app. You can go into, this is Launch Darkly's feature flag management console. You can go ahead and flip a switch that's going to change the name of the app. So you'll see here that the application name changes according to that. Oops, I flipped the wrong switch here. So I'll turn off this new welcome message and you'll see this string change. I mean, there's nothing too crazy about that here, but you can see this is a very, very basic Boolean flag, right? It has no context awareness, no awareness of who I am or anything like that, and the flags get increasingly complex. So another one I can do is go ahead and change the value of a color. So I'll go ahead and make this red. So this is our an overall style change. And you can see a whole bunch of components change color. This is pretty basic stuff, but obviously most feature flag vendors, in addition to Boolean flags that turn something on or off, they can also have payloads that define specific values. So, I can change this color to any number of colors, to blue, green, or whatever I have defined here. Things get a little bit more interesting when we involve targeting. So I'll show you what that looks like. And again, this is common to basically all vendors. I'll go to installation instructions here. So this says if my platform, and platform is an attribute that exists for any user of this site, is equal to Linux, then I'm going to show a certain value. And in this case, it's the value, as implied here with the flag name, it's the value that shows how I can download this this feature, how I can download the app. So in my case, because I'm on a Linux distribution, it says install our killer app package using your distribution's package manager. So this is basically pulled from standard headers that Chrome sends. Chrome sends a lot of telemetry headers about what kind of operating system you're on, various details about the host. And we have defined this flag so that it looks at those particular values and then can actually intelligently respond accordingly. If I was on a Windows system, this would say download our setup file. In addition to rules like this that are based on particular attributes of the user and evaluated based on that, you can do splits. So you can do kind of A/B testing this way. So you can say, 50% of users are going to have this experience, while another 50% are going to see this experience. So basically all feature flag vendors support these concepts. And what we've done is create an SDK, an abstraction that allows us to kind of represent them all with a single API and a single interface. So to kind of prove that, what I'll do is I'm going to restart this all, and instead I'll attach a different provider. So now instead of using Launch Darkly, what I'm going to be doing is using basically just a JSON file provider. So this is obviously not practical, but it's really good for demo purposes. You never want to deploy with something like a file provider. It would be pretty redundant, but now you can see I have direct control over these flags just based on this file. So if I change, this is writing to a file in my local file system, again, just for demo purposes. But if I change a value here, you see it immediately affects the result. So I didn't change any application code at all. And I'm switching between, a Launch Darkly feature flag control system to one defined in the file system. I could have just as easily switched to CloudBee's feature management solution, Flagsmith's feature management solution, or any of the other providers we support. One of the other features that's probably interesting to show here is some of the extension and integration points. So one of the cool things we can do comes out when we use this Fibonacci demo. So this just calculates Fibonacci using a particular algorithm, and you can see here we're using a recursive algorithm, which is hopelessly inefficient. I can change that to a quicker algorithm. That's not really the important part I wanted to demo here. The important part is the way that this package is set up, that this demo is set up. We're treating the Fibonacci code like a third-party library. So we have no direct control into any of the Fibonacci code, but the Fibonacci library does use the open feature API. So you can see they have their own flag defined here. They're not exposing any of it to us as the consumer of this library, and they're not implementing any provider. All this third-party library has done is referenced open feature, the zero dependency API. Again, think the Open Telemetry API, which has no dependencies really. It's just an API layer that defines some basic interfaces. So that's what this third-party library has done. And we can basically, because of the way open feature works, we can do a couple things. We can take control over that flag value, basically inject our value into it from our application code, but we can also inject additional context into it without having any without having any first level awareness, without having any first party awareness between this library and our code. So we don't have to configure this library in any way to know about our user or our context or anything like that. But you can see that it does. It knows, what platform I'm on. You can see that being logged here. It has my local IP address. So basically, we're similar to how you would see an OpenTelemetry baggage in the OpenTelemetry context are injected using techniques like thread local storage or continuation storage. We can inject contextual data into third-party libraries flag evaluation. I know that's a bit of a complex example. You can kind of ping me after if you'd like to hear more about it. I'm gonna move on from it because it gets a little bit esoteric, but one of the other really cool things that this kind of pattern allows us to do, one of the other cool features that our API allows us to do is, without adding any dependencies into the kind of the API package like we were mentioning before, we can do some first-class extensions and integrations. So one of them would be OpenTelemetry itself. So I'm going to switch this back to recursive because it's a little bit better for this demo. We have a concept of hooks, which allows you to add arbitrary behavior to any flag evaluation globally. So again, whether that flag exists in first-party code or third-party code, you can add arbitrary behavior around them. And this is a great place to add telemetry, to add additional logging. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what I mean. We have this sample OpenTelemetry hook. And basically, this uses some semantic conventions that we recently proposed to the OpenTelemetry specification that basically provide additional metadata about a flag evaluation. So basically, we can configure this OpenTelemetry hook in our first-party code, and flags existing anywhere in our code are going to have this additional behavior added around the evaluation, and we have specific lifecycle hooks that we can basically define in this hook object. Lifecycle stages is what we call them, and you can put arbitrary behavior there. So what that allows us to do practically, in the case of this OTel hook, is inject telemetry around feature flagging. So I'm just going to go ahead and run this one more time to make sure I have recent data. And I'll go to Zipkin. Zipkin is a OpenTelemetry compatible, trace viewer. Just going to run a query now. You can see there's a couple long queries. This is our 4-second Fibonacci query. And you can see, we executed this request. The interesting part is you can see at the bottom here, there's a feature flag OpenTelemetry span. And you can see all kinds of interesting stuff. You can see the provider that was used to get this span. You can see the actual evaluated value we got. So it's recursive, the key of the flag. So this is just one possible extension that our API kind of allows people to define, so that you can get additional observability into flag evaluations and really how they impact performance, especially if you're doing A/B testing and that kind of thing. So you can implement arbitrary behavior here, whether it's logging, even transformation of the flag values themselves. You can use hooks for that sort of stuff. So both the context injection stuff I was showing you earlier, as well as these hooks to add arbitrary behavior to a flag evaluation. This is stuff that no feature flag SDK currently offers at all, and for good reason, right? So you need some amount of standardization to even do the kind of telemetry stuff we're talking about, right? So you need a layer where you can define some basic structures, and then make sure that they conform to make sure that they're in sync with a telemetry specification like OTel. for example. And so that's why it becomes important to have an open standard, and why standardizing this stuff really unlocks a lot of additional features and richness in feature flagging. So I think that's a high level demo of basically where we are at right now. Oh, one thing I can do just to make things clear, I'll show you the Launch Darkly provider. So again, like Josh was asking about, this is basically a really simple, very simple implementation of the mapping layer that essentially, allows you to use, abstracts Launch Darkly from any of your flag evaluation calls, any of the evaluation that an application author would be doing. It just implements this feature provider interface, which has to be defined in every language implementation. And then provides a bunch of methods for actually resolving those flag values from that source of truth. Anybody have any questions? I know that was a lot of information in a short amount of time, but if you want to follow up with me after, you can do that, or you can ask questions now if we have time.
Yeah, I have a question. One, this is pretty cool. It's cool to kind of standardize and make some conventions around these APIs. And I really like that, you're starting with the shims for the providers and the SDK side, because we can't really influence the API providers first, or at least it would be harder. But my question is should this be generalized to more just any configuration management? Like, why something specific for feature flags rather than, like a Spring config? I want to pull, a YAML file or something with all of my Spring config, or I don't know, just other kinds of configuration management. Why limit to feature flags?
I suppose that's not a good question. I mean, generally, I suppose that's a good question.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Sorry if I said not. My apologies. I meant to say not a bad question. I suppose that's not a bad question. I think that feature flags probably represent a superset of functionality that you can't just do with basic configuration. So to go back to an example, which maybe might make what I'm saying a little bit clearer, this is a very, forget the terminology, like dumb configuration. It's a static configuration. So it doesn't have any knowledge of who the user is. It doesn't have any rule sets defined. This is a very basic one that essentially is just reading a file. And so that would map to, I think, what you're saying. Really, when you talk about, on the various feature flagging vendors and kind of a separate SaaS service or management platform, or even cloud native components and CRDs for defining feature flags, if you're not doing some kind of dynamic evaluation, whether it's based on like a random split or a distribution based on percentages or something like that, or based on the identity of the user, I think that stuff just becomes pretty basic. So I think there are lots of solutions for that. It's really the dynamic understanding of the user and rule-based evaluation, split percentage-based evaluation, A/B testing. I think that's where a lot of the value is, and that's why it makes sense to kind of target that. A lot of people, frankly, when they first hear about feature flags, they think just in terms of Boolean on or off static configuration that has no dynamic input. And then they ask questions like, why wouldn't I use a config map, right? And I think that's we're not trying to solve that problem. That's a solved problem. I hope that kind of answers your question.
Yeah, it does help. You're saying like this is particularly oriented to dynamic configuration that needs to be solved at runtime.
I think that if you're not using feature flags that way, you probably don't need feature flags. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, that helps.
Feel free to disagree with me. I mean, it's not a bad question. Sorry for misspeaking earlier. It's not a bad question. I think it may be worth generalizing this more.
Right. I was going the other way a tiny bit. Like, hey, if you succeed with this with feature flags, there may be other dynamic configuration I need. But now I know what sets this apart, so that helps me.
Thanks. So great question. Anyone else? Okay, I think that's all I have. this you know, I'm not a UI developer, but this UI and this kind of demo is very shortly going to be pushed into our project, as well as a big README around it, so you can play with this stuff if you want to. It's not there yet, but in the next couple of days it will be. So you're kind of, this meeting is the first people who've seen this new fancy demo. But yeah, I hope that was interesting to you guys, and thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. Again, we'll share it and with others as well for the recording, and good questions here. So we're almost on top of the hour. Still, Chris, as you are here, and obviously, unfortunately, we ran a bit longer here. Do you still want to provide us like a short intro? What Mist is? Doing?
Yeah. Let's do like 5 minutes intro, let's say, because it's still very early in any case. So I'm my name, first of all, is Chris Psaltis. I'm the co-founder of Mist.io, and we're building an open source multi-cloud management platform there. So over the next months, we are thinking of contributing the project that we've been working on the past few years to CNCF or some other foundation, so that we can improve the governance of the project and work with like a more transparent, more community-oriented way. So I wanted to show you a little bit more about what it is, so you can get an idea of what I'm talking about. But like, if I can share my screen for a second. Can you see my terminal?
Yes.
All right. So
if you didn't see that.
So yeah, okay. So this is the CLI interface of the platform. There's also a web UI, but this is one of the things that we're working on. So we're trying to make it as like, we're taking inspiration from kubectl, let's say. So let me check once. Okay, so I'm now targeting the production installation of this. So practically what you can do is that you can, I have already connected some cloud accounts here, you know, one in Alibaba, one in EC2, Google, VMware installation, vSphere, Vultr, Docker host. So we support about 20 different VMs. So on one hand, we're integrating with native APIs coming from its cloud provider, and then on the other hand, we're exposing the Mist API, let's say. So practically what you could do, for example, is like get a list of all the VMs or all the clusters or the containers that we have running across the platforms that you have connected, or maybe, you know, get just what's on Vultr, or I don't know, like search only for machines that are stopped. And then, you know, obviously you can also export those on more than a single format. So let's say, you know, you want to get this in YAML, so you can put it on another system or in Json, or you can just want to check out what's the name, for example, and the cost of this VM, and then export it on CSV, so you can get like a report for what you're spending, like, or things like that. And but there, you know, obviously you can create new resources, like for example in machines you can do something like, you know, test minus CPU 2. And what this will do, for example, right now, is that it will go over all the accounts that I have connected to Mist, and it will decide where it makes more sense to provision something. Like the parameter here for the decision is the cost. So is AWS cheaper or is Azure? What's the cheapest image I can find with 2 CPUs, and I will spin it up there. Obviously, you can be more specific about that, but this is really helpful when you just need to spin something up quickly. There are many types of resources that we support. I already mentioned, compute types like containers, container hosts, hypervisor hosts, VMs, managed clusters, let's say KES, GKE, things like that. But also, standalone Kubernetes clusters, Red Hat OpenShift, things like that. Both public and private types of infrastructure, but there's also networking, object storage, blob storage, like ST. There is also DNS as a service, Route 53, for example. And then on top, we are also layering some functionality that's more, let's say, NIST specific, like, for example, scripts. So you can upload your Ansible playbooks or your executables, like your Bash scripts, your Python scripts, and then you can run them from our platform to your target VMs. But you can also get, direct SSH access to those VMs without the need of having all the credentials locally. These are stored in Mist itself, so you authenticate with Mist, and that's it. Like, so now I'm in one of those VMs, without having access to a private key locally. Let me share for a second, because this is work in progress. So the CLI, I mean, like the web UI is more like this. So you see everything that I mentioned so far. We're currently working on integrating with Helm as well, so you can execute a Helm chart on one of your clusters. Yeah, there are schedules for executing periodic tasks, taking a backup, rotating some logs, things like that. And yeah, and there is also like a monitoring service. I forgot to mention that. So you can install an agent on your VM. This agent will begin collecting metrics, sending them back to our backend. We are working on top of the Prometheus API for that. So you can plug it into several types of backends like Prometheus, Victoria Metrics, InfluxDB. So yeah, so you can monitor your metrics, set some rules, alerts that might even trigger some automated actions, like run this script whenever this happens. And yeah, so that's like in a very, very brief period the platform. So what I was trying to get out of this demo was to hear your thoughts and see if it makes sense, or if you think that it makes sense in such a project in the context of CNCF, and if it does, then we should probably consider what would be the next step for applying to the sandbox. But at least at a high level, I'd like to hear your thoughts of, like, does it make sense in the ecosystem of CNCF? Because as you've seen, we're not cloud native specific. We're practically allow you to manage any type of infrastructure, containers or not. We don't really care. Yeah, so that's what I was trying to get out of this discussion.
One question just for like overall clarification, because obviously you providing this as SSS solution right now. Is the open source piece equivalent to this SaaS solution? Because we're seeing it as SaaS.
It is 90% equivalent. Like there are a few things that are missing from the open source version. These are mostly enterprise features, like authenticating with Active Directory, all that, role-based access controls, things like that. But other than that, everything is under an Apache v2.
I mean, role-based access control per se might be something you might consider for an open source project, just from personal experience. You know that people usually keep it.
Yeah, I know. I don't know if this is going to be like the end project that we are going to submit, to be honest. So figuring out what the perfect mix would be is part of what we will try to do. But yeah, I'm showing you the entire thing now. What will be part of the submission, I don't know. For example, I don't know if we will submit the web UI because it makes the whole project more complicated and much bigger and difficult to contribute to. It would probably be like the backend side, the backend server and the CLI or something like that. But you know, this is still up in the air. I mean, the web UI is already open source, but you know, it's harder to deal with. It makes the whole project more complicated.
I mean, there's some overlap with cross-plane, obviously,
Yeah.
to some extent, like not entirely. I mean, there are differences and overlaps at the same time. So
yeah. It's certainly there's certainly an overlap for sure. I would say that okay, in our case, you don't need to run Kubernetes to manage the infrastructure, and you don't depend on because you don't depend on CRDs. So, but on the other hand, you know, yeah. So it's somewhat related, let's say. Yeah.
I mean, not that there can be a project in the CNCF, sorry, that do both, but I think there would be some guidance when to use one or the other. Sorry, Josh.
Yeah, I just want to be the devil's advocate, and this will clear up another question I have. Should Crossplane use NIST underneath rather than going directly to the cloud providers? What would it lose? Like right now, they're going. In other words, I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, that this is basically a shim API over all of the cloud providers' APIs.
Yeah.
And Crossplane has the complexity of calling every, you know, underneath. Although I guess it's using ACK. But what are you losing? You must be losing, like, how, if I can't, can I get every feature out of the underlying clouds? Like I saw you have live cloud.
Yeah. You don't get every feature out of the underlying clouds. But this is, I'm guessing this is an issue that Crossplane are also facing. I mean, if it's not part of the SDK or whatever, you're missing it there as well. So yeah, I think like the main difference here is if you need Kubernetes to run your management system or not. Like I think it ends up being the critical question. So do you want your management to live inside Kubernetes itself or not? So I think in this context, Crossplane would be, let's say, more ideal for a group of users who are very Kubernetes focused and very Kubernetes experienced, let's say. Mist would be more ideal with in organizations who are either making their first steps with Kubernetes, or they don't have a lot of experience in it, or they just don't want to run Kubernetes cluster just to have the management layer, the centralized management layer. So yeah. I think like there are several pros and cons. That's for sure.
Yeah, it reminds me of projects that I came across like 10 years ago, and I noticed it's in your organization. Live Cloud for Python, JClouds for Java, Fog was in Ruby, was all these abstraction layers over the cloud provider APIs.
Yeah, we're working on top of Apache libcloud. We are contributors to Apache libcloud, and we maintain the project as well. We have a maintainer there as well.
So is your shim over the providers based on libcloud? Because I will ask, maybe it should be an Apache then with libcloud.
Yeah, it's mostly libcloud, but this is like on the API layer with its cloud provider. The other parts are, you know, they don't go through libcloud. Libcloud offers like a small set of functionality in a subset of, it's a subset of what we do, let's say. Yeah.
For some stuff. I mean, to me, it makes sense in CNCF or at least in some sort of cloud consortia, because you're trying to, you know, create a kind of de facto standard or open standard for managing cloud resources, you know. instead of Azure, create a VM, and AWS create EC2 instance, and GCP, whatever you're saying, just create a Mist VM and it will handle it.
Yeah, and this is part of what we're trying to do, like create an abstraction so people don't need to deal with all the details. In some cases you want, and we can still provide that, but in many cases you just want like a VM quickly or something like very quickly without having to worry, where do I put that? Do I put it in Azure or Google or AWS? So and who cleans it up afterwards? So like that's part of what we do. Like we help you with proactively, let's say, making sure that people will not forget an extra large instance running on AWS costing you a fortune because they wanted to test something.
I think it is an interesting project, but you brought up like some points on where I think you should get. I mean that cross-plane delineation, obviously running on Kubernetes and not running on Kubernetes is like one thing that you can do. But I think functionality-wise, I would also be interested in like what you provide or what you would provide compared to cross-plane, where the overlap is, where you see the delineation.
Okay.
Also, that like the dependency on an Apache project. Nothing wrong with Apache projects, but to Josh's point, just answering the question: is this the right place to live if there's like that dependency there, and then also like how do you like going forward are planning to kind of maintain it? That was one I remember when we talked to Crossplane. They invested quite a lot of time to stay in sync with the resources that the cloud providers provide, so that you can do it, which is actually, to be fair, not playing Crossplane down. I think they're doing a great job there. But in your case, you build even an abstraction layer on top of that, and that might be probably even harder. And again, I see value in there, but that's maybe something to think about, like how you would position this, how you want to keep it up to date. And like also then defining the feature set. Like for me, from personal experience, I think we would never, most people would never use a tool that does not have like any role-based access control for creating cloud resources. So, but again, this is still for you to think about what you want to put in there and what you don't want to put in there. I mean, the Active Directory piece is something else. I know it's not necessarily required at an early stage, but for I think adoption, once you then go into incubation and obviously later on graduation, these requirements from a security perspective and also from production adoption will come up, because if everybody can just go in who has a login and create, say, 50 production instances without having the rights to do so, will make it very hard to adopt as an open source project per se. And still, it should be obviously possible to adopt it in a pure open source fashion as well. But maybe that's a conversation we then can have as you proposed at the next meeting. Maybe just sharing it as some food for thought for you, like maybe sharpen.
Yeah, I will. These are very, very good points. I will look into those, and I will get back to you. In any case, this is not something urgent. I mean, it's something that we are still thinking about. So I can get back and discuss more details in a future meeting after KubeCon. All right.
Yeah, let's do this. And again, also you don't have to do it for Sandbox. I still always recommend looking at the guidelines for incubating projects. Not that you have to fulfill them, but they're also like good food for thought. Like an example, like relation to other CNCF projects, and there you would obviously put something in there, like how is it related to Crossplane, how is it related to other topics. But yeah, thanks for the ad hoc and
thank you.
I think it is an interesting problem that you solve. It is a problem that I think a lot of people have as well. And yeah, let's then talk again in a couple of weeks. And also, if you're going to be at KubeCon, you will meet some of the people here as well. Also, feel free to say hi, obviously.
Yeah, unfortunately, I won't be there
okay.
This year. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So as we're over time here already, I'll call it a meeting for today. Thanks everybody for joining. As always, as we will put the meeting again on YouTube. Thomas, some follow-ups for us, and also share it with the wider community. Thanks everyone, and have a nice rest of your day. Thanks.
Oh, Elias, just one question. Is it like still 8 AM PST? I thought it was changed to like 4 PM UTC or something.
Sorry, you're really hard to understand. I just
Like previously I thought that the time was changed to like 16 UTC. Like
no, that was just during the, we have this great thing about daylight savings time that is different between Europe and the US. So this was always the same time slot. So for me, this is at like regular time, it's always 5 PM. It's just during that weird weeks that it's not 5 PM for me from Europe, which makes it 4 UTC. So it was 4 UTC. Was it daylight savings time? I'm now myself confused, but it's definitely the same time it always was.
Yes.
Okay.
Time zones are fun. Time zones and daylight savings, really fun.
Okay, cool. Just making sure it's like 8 AM in PST, Pacific time zone, right? Okay.
But yeah, actually the single source of truth here should really be the calendar, the CNCF calendar, because that one is pretty well aware of time zones. At least that's what you would expect calendars to be. It's like, so sorry if that got mixed up, but I'm importing it directly from the CNCF calendar. That might be the best approach to do so, honestly.
Yeah.
I think we should change this in our repository, because it's really pointed in UTC.
Oh, okay. Then directly reference to the calendar. Yeah, that makes sense. Sorry if that got mixed up. We'll take care of it. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Have fun, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Thanks, all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.